Hello, hello. Hannah Chelsea, the baby maven here, and I am so excited to welcome you to today's expert interview. I know that you're just going to love our topic of conversation, and I'm thrilled to tell you a bit more about our guest expert. Shannon Meade works with women who are natural-born givers to help them tweak their self-talk so they can also take care of themselves without feeling guilty. And you can sign up for her 7-day Tweak Your Self-Talk Challenge at www.supportingbalance.org. Shannon is so wonderful, so I'm going to pass it over to her so she can share a bit more about herself and her business.
Hey everyone, I am so honored to be included in the series today and looking forward to giving you some tips that you can put into action right away.
That's incredible. I'm so excited to have you here today, Shannon. So we're going to dive right in. And I know something that we had talked about previously was using affirmations in your life. And so for viewers who aren't really very familiar with this, what are affirmations?
So an affirmation is any positive statement that you make really to anyone. But when we talk about affirmations and using them in our self-care and our self-talk, then we're talking about affirmations that we say to ourselves. And I really recommend that people use these out loud. I've actually, through my challenge, been sharing with people to do affirmations, and then in doing some one-on-one calls with people, found out that they were just doing them silently in their head. And of course, there might be a place for that. If you're sitting in a meeting and you're starting to feel overwhelmed, you might use an affirmation silently in your head in that situation. But I really encourage people to actually say them out loud to themselves, because we're involving more of our senses when we do that. And I think oftentimes it's very easy for us to wait for someone else to affirm us, to say something positive to us. And unfortunately, that can often leave us waiting for a long time for someone to say just the right thing that's going to speak to us and to the particular space that we're in. And so I have found a lot of power in saying those things to myself and not waiting for someone else to say them. And then, of course, when someone else recognizes that and says it, it also feels good, but I'm not like hanging on that and waiting for that to show up.
That is true, because like that's kind of like waiting for somebody to be able to like read your mind.
Right.
Like, it's so cool if they could, but it's so rare that they can.
Right.
So why is it important to say them out loud? Is it just more powerful that way?
Well, I mean, when we say something, we're actually using our body to communicate that thing. And I actually use my body in some other ways. I have really appreciated yoga practices. And so sometimes with my affirmations, I will actually pair like a yoga pose or a yoga series, like a movement through that, because then I'm involving my body in another way. Another thing that I really enjoy essential oils, or, if you don't use oils, you can even go outside near a pine tree that you can smell, or a rosemary bush, or you can peel an orange. And so every time we engage a new sense, then we're kind of inviting that deeper into our understanding. And so saying it out loud, like we're hearing it, we're saying it, we're involving our body in that. And for me, I'm a really kinesthetic learner. And so that has maybe been more powerful for me than maybe someone else who doesn't tend to be that way. But whenever I can involve another sense and another activity into whatever practice I'm doing, then it becomes more powerful.
That's such a beautiful thing to think about, pairing the affirmations with something else. Because also the things that you were saying, like yoga and essential oils, I was like, oh, those both sound so just like good and happy or soothing. Like they're nice practices on their own. And I think pairing them with an affirmation would just feel like, yes. And just add to the power. I could see how bringing in other senses at the same time could give it that much more energy.
Right.
So what are some of the positive effects of doing affirmations?
Well, I mean, for me, I think this brings in my story and kind of where I got involved in this practice, because this isn't something that I have done forever. But after my second son was born, I just had so much overwhelm about trying to meet everyone's needs. And I just felt like I didn't have enough to give, or like I wasn't enough. I'm not enough to meet the needs of my then like almost 2-year-old and my infant and my husband and some other people in my life who were dealing with their own stuff. And this is why I have really been drawn to work with other women who are givers, because I have found myself so much in my life enjoying being in that position of like caring for other people and making sure to show up for them. And then I think it's very easy to forget that we also need to show up for ourselves. And so really like my message, the thing that I try to share, and the reason that I'm involved in this kind of work is because I believe that finding or creating a life that we really love, that we can really enjoy, has to do with creating a balance. And this is where the name of my business, Supporting Balance, came from, is like creating this balance between the love and the care that we send out to other people, and then the love and energy that we pour into ourselves. And so in working, especially with new moms, as we increase our responsibilities to care for other people, and we have new, these new little beings in our lives that we need to pour love and care into, then in order to balance that equation, we actually have to pour more love into ourselves, to be able to really be equipped to provide the kind of care and energy and attention that especially a newborn, but really any child, demands. And so for me, in that time period, I was really overwhelmed. And then I was introduced to this practice of using affirmations. And at first it felt silly. And I'll share a couple of specific affirmations that you can try, and you can kind of see how you feel, how that makes you feel. But for me, it felt a little strange at first. But as I really settled into the practice, then I was able to show up in a new way for my family, and to not always be hanging on an affirmation from, my husband, for example, or from family members that I wanted to respect the way that I was parenting, or whatever I was waiting for them to recognize. And so using the affirmations really helped me to shift my guilt around not being able to show up for everyone. And as I cared more for myself, then I felt less guilty, and that provided really a positive kind of cycle instead of this kind of downward spiral that I felt like I was like, never enough, never have enough, and I'm tired, and all of these things. And really, as I started caring more about myself and asking for what I needed, then that allowed other people to show up into my life and be there for me. And I was listening to an interview with Brene Brown the other day, author who I love. If you're not familiar with her, definitely check her out. But she was talking about, the talk is called The Anatomy of Trust. And she was talking about how people trusting us actually depends upon us asking for help, and not only being the source of help for people all the time. Like, people can't really trust us if they don't know that they can also show up for us. And so the affirmations gave me kind of the courage to start asking for what I needed, and going like, hey, I'd really like to get to yoga class this week, or I'd really like to have a quiet time. Can you take the boys for a walk, or can you, do whatever? And asking my folks to, step up and help. And they, of course, loved that. They wanted to spend time with their grandsons. And, my hubby wanted to spend time with the boys, and he just didn't know kind of how to show up for me. And so it enabled me to ask for the help that I needed.
That's absolutely wonderful. It's so cool that I wasn't expecting those to be the positive effects that you were going to share from having affirmations, like that you felt that much more comfortable just kind of like being yourself and asking for the support. And it seems like it really empowered you.
Definitely did. Yeah.
So that's wonderful. Could you share with us like how often, if to have like an affirmation practice in your life, is there like a suggested amount of time that you should do it, or how many, like you should focus on a couple of affirmations and do them every day, or every time you, I don't know, take a drink of water, you do an affirmation? Like, is there any method to it? Or
yes and no. I think some of it has to do with getting more in touch with yourself and figuring out what your needs are and what are the spaces in which you feel really overwhelmed. And so when I first start working with people, and one of the affirmations that I use in my 7-day Tweak Your Self-Talk challenge, that's just really simple and a really easy one to incorporate, at least as you start your day, but then also at other points in the day when you feel overwhelmed, is just to speak back to that frustration that I was having of feeling like I wasn't enough, is to say, I am enough. And it sounds like so simple to just say, I am enough, and go like, okay, what does that mean? But as we're speaking that, we're making that declaration and making it true for ourselves. And for me, that helped me to kind of narrow down the things that maybe the ways that I actually needed to show up, and what it was that I I don't know, what I expected of myself versus what everyone else was expecting of me, or maybe just my perception of what everyone else might have been expecting from me. And just to think like, these are my children and they're here in my life and I'm their mom and this is how I'm going to show up for them. And it's enough. Like, I don't have to have everything together the way that so-and-so would, or the way that my, somebody might expect that I should. Like, I am enough. And that was really empowering for me. And so I say that affirmation to myself throughout the day, but especially first thing in the morning to kind of set my intention of my day of going like, okay, I don't need to get in a frenzy about things. Like the things that I'm committed to, the ways that I'm going to show up, that's enough. I am enough. So that's a really simple affirmation to start with. Did I answer the question? I feel like now I'm not sure what your question, I lost track of the question.
That's fine. Yeah, I'll ask it again. My question was, how often do you suggest affirmations, and is there like a set number that you would recommend? Like, take 3 affirmations and focus on those daily, or I was just kind of curious if there was kind of a tried and true method of like, oh, if you repeat 3 different affirmations 4 times a day, like that's one of the best ways to really like stand in that power and start feeling the results of it, or if any affirmations are good affirmations. And like, I was just curious.
Yeah. So a couple of things to think about. There's been some research to suggest that it takes about 21 days to form a new habit. And so if you can try to commit to doing something for a whole month, then you're providing a little bit of padding for yourself. And I really encourage people to find ways to incorporate the affirmations into their routines that they're doing already, so that it becomes natural for them and it doesn't have to be like this daily chore that they're trying to remember to do and forgetting to do. And so, I do some affirmations right when I brush my teeth and wash my face in the morning, because there I am standing in front of the mirror, and using the mirror can actually be really powerful as well. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But when you're brushing your teeth is a great time to stretch your legs, to look in the mirror, to think about like the day that's ahead, or the day that you're just closing up, and then tomorrow and what your intentions are for that day. And so that's a really easy time maybe to incorporate an affirmation. Or because aroma is so powerful, maybe, if you drink coffee or you drink a certain kind of tea in the morning, maybe you pair an affirmation with that practice that you're already doing. So I sit and I drink my coffee and I go, I have ample time today for the things that really matter. And so it's really, I feel like the important part is incorporating the affirmations into your day in such a way that you will persist with them. Because obviously saying something one time to yourself isn't going to make a huge shift in your life. But if you can persist with it, then that can be really a new practice for you to draw from and feel empowered by. Another example of a time when I use affirmations is if I ever get stuck in traffic and it's like I'm supposed to be somewhere and stuff is going on, and I go, okay, like what are the things that actually matter today? I have ample time today for the things that really matter. And I might notice that my toddler is in the back seat singing to himself, and I might just take the time to appreciate like his joy. Or I might have a conversation with my passenger, or I might use the time to turn on a novel that I'm reading and just listen to it on Audible. And so just that shift in perspective goes like, hey, I'm stuck in this situation, but I don't have to just like be like, I'm going to be late, I'm going to be late, I'm going to be late, and let it ruin my whole outlook on my day.
That's great. Actually, I was going to bring up when you're in a car that's one of the places that back when I was not working from home and I had a commute every day, that like 20 minutes in the morning was my time to like, I would go through like my gratitude list and I would go through my affirmations, because it was just, I was like, what else would I be doing in the car right now? I'd be like listening through radio stations or maybe singing along to a song or something like that. But I think that's such a great suggestion of kind of fitting affirmations into things that you already do during the day, because the last thing that somebody that, is pregnant or has little kids wants to do is add like another thing onto their to-do list, which is never how affirmations should feel, because they're wonderful and there's no like forward moving, and they just feel like cozy and good when you actually like get into that routine and it becomes part of who you are.
Right.
So I think that this could very easily lead into, I know that obviously with your program, you do like tweaking your self-talk. And so how do you do that? How do you tweak your self-talk?
So I think that many women in particular have the experience of serving as their own harshest critic. And when I say that, I get lots of, head nods around the room. If I say that in a group, everyone's like, yeah, totally. Because we know ourselves better than anyone else does. And we only see the image that other people want to put forward. And so we have a really unfair contrast and comparison, and we end up kind of beating ourselves up, or we can beat ourselves up over that sort of apparent lack that we have over the things that we see of other people. I think social media kind of exacerbates this because people choose what they're going to put forward and what they're not. But I think that as we kind of get more aware, and one of the maybe benefits of using the affirmations is that we become more aware of when we are being negative with ourselves. And I think it's very easy to just kind of like react to this negative voice in our heads all of the time. And for me, like I tend to be a yeller. And so that's how that comes out, and I might yell just like a yelp, or I might like yell at my kid about doing something that was frustrating to me. But if I really kind of dig under that, it's a frustration that I have with myself over not being, as capable as I think I'm supposed to be, or not being as organized, or, whatever kind of the rub is for you. And, so if like my kids end up making this huge mess, then I feel overwhelmed. And I also feel like I didn't do my job of teaching them to put things away, or, it's like very quickly becomes a self-critique. And so using the affirmations and just kind of being mindful, raising our awareness of the ways that we're talking to ourselves can be a really powerful way to shift our self-talk. And so a more challenging affirmation than the I am enough affirmation, which is a great way to start, is to actually use the mirror and to stand in front of the mirror and look at your reflection, kind of look at yourself in the eye, and to say, I love you, to your reflection in the mirror. And if you've never done this before, it can definitely feel silly, awkward. It can make you feel kind of like fake. And it's really interesting the things that it brings up for people, because when you genuinely try to do this, you will recognize kind of the standing voice that you have in your head. And I've had some people feel like, oh, I'm a pretty confident person. And then I stood in front of the mirror and I tried to say, I love you, Sadie, or, whatever. And they didn't realize how difficult that was going to be. And they're like, it's so easy for me to just be negative to myself all day about being klutzy or being late or being, whatever it is, but so difficult to raise our energy and be positive with ourselves and say, and I love you. And so I do that, and I try to add my name and go like, I love you, Shannon, I really love you. And when I was first challenged to do this, that practice was introduced to me when my second son was a little over a year old. And when I first started doing this, it felt really ridiculous. And then I felt, just kind of frustrated about the whole practice. But I pushed through because I tend to stick to my commitments, and someone had challenged me to do this for a full month. And so I did it for the full month. And then one of kind of the side benefits that I found is that I walked into the bathroom one time, and my then about 3-year-old was standing in front of the mirror and saying to himself, I love you, Jack. And I just like melted my heart, because this is the thing. It was like such this cool, and when we see a kid saying I love you to themselves, it's very heartwarming. And like if we say someone else really loves themselves, we often think of that as a negative thing. And I think we really have to overcome that and go like, no, this is actually this really pure, innocent thing. You're a person who is worthy of being loved. And when your kids are doing that, it's just really revealing. And I feel like also just shows this lesson of when we really embrace and love ourselves, then we invite other people to do the same. And so you're inviting your children and other people in your life to really kind of rise to that same thing. And for me, I feel like, man, like now both of my boys do this. They say it in the mirror, or they say it when they do their I love yous, or, they're like, I love you, Dad. I love you, Mama. And I love myself. It's like the sweetest thing, because it's so innocent and so pure. And I just think like, man, if they can just capture that and hang on to it, then they won't have the same kind of, baggage to unpack that maybe many of us as adults have, of going like, oh, there's something wrong with loving and embracing myself. Like, certainly we can see an extreme of that. But I think the people who kind of walk around pompous and proud, that's not really a self-love either. It's just kind of the other end of the spectrum. And, I think probably trying to overcome a sense of a lack of self-love.
Definitely. I think that you hit on so many really cool things when you were talking about that, with saying that first of all, society is like, it can be so brutal with how we wind up viewing things in our own lives, because you see these people that are putting out their absolute best foot, and then you compare yourself to that, and then we become our own harshest critics, like you were talking about. And this made me think about that. I recently read something that said, if you had to list all of the things you love, how long would it take you to get to write like me or yourself? I was like, wow, here I was thinking that like, I feel pretty good about me. I really like myself. And I was like, if I went through that practice, I don't know if I would even think like, oh, I could put me on the list. That's something I absolutely love. So I think that it's incredible to not only say that affirmation, but then to also say it in the mirror. So you're like looking yourself in the eye. I can't wait to try doing that. Of course, I'm like, oh, I'll totally be able to do it. That'll be great. But I'll be interested to see kind of like what emotions come up when I actually am looking at myself. If I'm like, oh, I feel so silly, or wow, this is strange, But I'm so excited to try that. And I would love for all of the viewers today to also give that a go, and not just give it a go, give it like a month, like you had tried, Shannon, because you saw such beautiful results from doing that. And oh my gosh, to hear that like you walked in to see your son doing that as well, that's wonderful. I mean, if this is something that can start early, and then he can hold on to it, like, that's how we create happiness in the future. We start with happy, like, little people who have a good sense of like self-love and self-confidence. Okay, so I know that you talked about that you can do affirmations in the mirror or while you're brushing your teeth. Is there anything else that you would suggest, or any other affirmations themselves that you would recommend to somebody who is brand new to doing affirmations? I know you said you like I am enough, and also saying I love you, like while looking at yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, so that other affirmation that I mentioned is one that a lot of people hang on to say, I have ample time today for the things that really matter. And so that affirmation, I feel like, can help us to prioritize and to really think about maybe the should list that we're compiling sort of against ourselves, the things that we think that we are supposed to be doing versus the things that actually matter to us. So that's definitely another one that I incorporate. But kind of like you mentioned earlier, I don't think there's a lot of value in like making a whole long list, because again, we want to get away from that sense of overwhelm and going like, oh, I'm supposed to say this one this time, and this one this time, and this one this time. So I really encourage people to start simply and, to use one or two, and then you can of course add to that. And as you become more aware, I'm sorry, I've got a train in the background here. I live right by the railroad tracks. As you use the affirmations, you will become a little bit more aware of your inner critic and kind of what that voice says. And so then you can craft your own kind of affirmation to combat whatever that negative voice is for you that tends to keep coming up. And so, that might be different for everyone, but I think really the mirror exercise in particular will help you to kind of notice what the critic says to you.
Yeah, I like the idea of making them kind of tailor-made. Once you get more accustomed to like, all right, this is like what my critic is always saying, that you can, whatever those pain points are, you can directly kind of combat them, or I guess respond to them in a sense with a positive affirmation that's like, no, this is like directly going to address exactly what that negativity said, and kind of say, no way, get out of here. which I really like. And I'm sure it could work in all different ways, with self-love, with parenting, with business things, or money, or whatever it is in your life that critic seems to just keep chirping about. That you could work in the opposite direction and give energy to like the good feelings instead.
Right.
So Shannon, I would love it if you could share with us kind of how people can work with you. Since, I mean, I love talking about affirmations, and I know our viewers are going to probably be fascinated and really want to be able to know how they can connect, or what it would look like to work with you in like more depth.
Right. So the first thing that I'm encouraging people to do is to join our Tweak Your Self-Talk Facebook group. And there's some conversation going on there around the affirmations that I share in the challenge. And there's also copies of past videos up there, because I've done some different challenges and kind of tweaked the challenge as I went. And so you can kind of poke around there and see some different affirmations and where people are finding, some successes with using those, and also people sharing some of the voices of the inner critic, and some coaching that I provide there for shifting that. And part of my vision with the Tweak Your Self-Talk idea is that you start with whatever that inner critic is saying, and you just kind of take a step from there. Because I don't think one of the things that I mentioned yet is that when we use the affirmations, for me, it makes a lot of sense to say something that I can feel authentic about. And so that might mean that you have to take some little baby steps. If you look in the mirror and you say, I love you, and it's like, you cannot feel into that because that's not the space that you're in right now, then you might have to modify it a little bit. And you can do that by saying, I am willing to love myself. Or to just pick maybe one aspect of love that you can embrace right now, so that you can say it genuinely and authentically, and then kind of move towards a deeper statement. So you might say, like, I am willing to accept myself, if that's where you're at right now. And as you say a statement that you feel really confident about, even if it's a little bit of a stretch for you, then it's also easier to maintain that practice, versus going like, I don't feel this, I can't keep going, I can't keep doing it. And so you can see some examples of that there in the Facebook group. I also do some telephone sessions. And so I am offering one of the viewers today, if you want to jump into that Tweak Your Self-Talk Facebook group and make a comment there about something that you learned, either from myself in the video today, or from one of the other speakers in this Baby Maven series, and share with the other members of the group there, then you will be entered to win a free Tweak Your Self-Talk telephone session with me. And that's about a 30-minute session where you can share some of the things that you're hearing your inner critic saying, and we can work together to kind of craft a couple of affirmations that will speak back to that, and you can use to incorporate into your self-talk practices.
That's such an incredible giveaway, Shannon. I mean, oh my goodness, to get like some one-on-one time with you, and then also to be able to craft some like tailor-made affirmations. I feel like that's just such an awesome and a powerful offer that you have in there for one of our lucky viewers who goes in to your Facebook group and comments. Could you share, we're just going to go through some of like the quick information to make sure everybody gets all of your details. Can you share the name of your business one more time?
Yeah, it's Supporting Balance, and you can find me at supportingbalance.org.
Perfect. What would you say that you're all about?
I am all about working with women who find themselves giving and giving and giving and wondering when they're going to get something back in return. And so that isn't only women, I work with women. It's not only mothers, but obviously for mothers, and especially new mothers, this is something that we really, a way that we really have to step up for ourselves, because we find ourselves giving and giving and giving and maybe feeling like the well is kind of dry.
Definitely. And what is one snippet of advice that you'd like to share? Like if viewers get one takeaway that you feel like is most important from today, what would it be?
Yeah, so for those women who find themselves giving and wondering when they're going to get something back, the important thing for you to do is to recognize that you are worthy of your own love and acceptance and respect, and to start making time for practices, even if it's just like 5 little minutes to look at yourself in the mirror or to do some deep breathing, or, taking a hot bath, or if you are able to get away for a weekend or even just an evening or whatever, that you start doing those practices that affirm to you that you are worthy of being loved, even just by yourself. And as you do that, then you will become aware of maybe the spaces where you can step up and care for yourself more, and use some affirmations and that to assure yourself that you're worthy of that, so you can take care of yourself without feeling guilty.
That's incredible advice, Shannon. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. It's been just such a pleasure getting to know more about you and the work that you do.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, and so viewers, I want to remind you that all of Shannon's information, her Facebook community, as well as her the challenge or the giveaway that she's doing, and how you can enter into that, and her website are all in the email that you received with the video of this recording. So Shannon, thank you again so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And viewers, thank you for tuning in today. It was lovely to have you on board. And until next time, I'm sending you very happy pregnancy and new mama wishes.